All right, got a special treat here. The Ohio State Wrestling Club national champ is back in the room, graduated but giving back to the club. Graham Carson, tell us what you're doing back tonight.
So I work in ag sales. I had a conference here in Columbus today. My younger brother's part of the club this year. He's a freshman, and conference ended at 6. Practice began at 6. Pretty easy to bring your shoes and get back to the club. It's good to be back here for the night in Columbus.
You make it sound easy. Guys like me just sit on the couch and watch guys like you sweat. Tell us why you're 4 years here, 4-time All-American, the second one for the club, right?
Yeah.
You end up winning the national championship in 2023, right? 25, sorry.
Yeah.
So just last year, you brought home the national championship for Division II in the NCWA, right? Tell us why you decided to stick with wrestling while you were here as a student at Ohio State University.
I feel like the club makes it pretty easy to do something, continue doing something you love. You know, for us guys that, you know, are fringe varsity team guys, you know, like I could have had the opportunity to walk on if I so choose, but just with my academics and trying to, you know, being a student athlete's hard, and I fully commend those guys that are able to do that, but it just never worked out in my schedule. You know, growing up on a family farm, you have to go home every fall and help out on the farm whenever it's needed, and so the club gives me the flexibility that I need to continue my daily life and still, you know, chase accomplishments in the sport and give back to community here in wrestling. So,
where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to high school?
So I went to high school at Miami Trace High School in Washington Courthouse, Ohio, and that's where I grew up as well. So about an hour south of Columbus, so it makes the drive pretty easy. And, you know, that's why it's easy to come back into the club every once in a while, too. It's just an hour away, just like coming to RTC practices up here or anything like that. So it's good, and I feel like it's a good outlet for the guys as well. So.
Well, you talk about an outlet. I mean, this is pain. Yeah. You know, this is not fun. This isn't going for a run in the woods. I mean, you guys are really getting after it. You have a national championship. The club brought home a national championship. That was in 2023, if I remember that correctly. Right? So this is some serious stuff you guys are doing here. Coming out of high school, did you know that academics, I assume, came first? Did you know that you were just gonna, you know what, I'm gonna get into Ohio State and I'm not really going to go the wrestling route as far as varsity goes or getting a scholarship goes? Did you already know that coming out of high school?
No, so I never knew really where I was going to go to college or that stuff coming out of high school. I didn't really even decide to come here until about May, my senior year, so it's pretty late. You know, for a lot of seniors, they decide in the fall when they get their acceptance, or the late winter, I guess, early spring. And so what did it for me is, like I had some schools reach out to me that, you know, were like Division I, but they weren't like your top of the heap, like not Big Ten schools. And so really only Big Ten schools in state, you know, we call them land grant universities, have agricultural colleges. And so that was one big thing, is they just didn't have my major, so I didn't want to go to a school that didn't have my major to maybe make the varsity team. And so I just decided to come to Ohio State because it was close to home, and I was told to find the wrestling club when I got here, and then it just kind of fell into place where I loved it and continued doing something I love. I always knew I had a passion for wrestling, and it just fell right in my lap and just ran with it. So
you talk about a little bit less structure when it comes to, you know, having to be there at a certain time. I know you guys are taking it seriously. Obviously, we've mentioned the national championship already, so you take it seriously. But is it a little bit less structured when it comes to maybe even some of the places that you could have gone to wrestle if you would have wrestled varsity? What's the atmosphere like? I mean, you guys are getting after it in here.
Yeah, so I'd say the atmosphere is pretty laid back. You know, like you said, we're still getting after it, and we're making each other better in here. I come in here and wrestle with Brady, who's just transferred in from the Cleveland State program that got cut this year. So really high-level guys that come in here, and, you know, we've had other state finalists, state placers in this room throughout, and many of the guys who were on this 2023 national championship team were multiple-time state placers here in Ohio. And, you know, some of those guys were even on the varsity team during their college career, and they just decided for one reason or another that the varsity team wasn't a fit for them, and this is just a great way to keep continuing to do something you love, continue that competition without, the strenuous student-athlete life. So, yeah, it's a little laid back in here compared to the varsity spot, but it's still a good grind, a good way to get that, that we call it the itch when you're off the mat, and scratch that itch when you need it. So
yeah, you're definitely doing that. You're scratching that itch, and I think everybody in this room could probably attest to that. You still maybe felt like your wrestling career wasn't over. You're going to be able to come to the club at a giant university, and oh my God, look at these facilities, right? So you get to participate in the best wrestling room in the country. Let's be serious about that, and you get to take part in that. What is that like? In fact, you didn't always have that for your first year on, right? This is fairly new development to be in this Cavelli Center here.
Yeah, so I think it was the 2023 season, the end that kind of, when competition starts ramping up for us is about January, February, and obviously March is when the national tournament is. And, Coach Rourke's always been a good friend to Tom Ryan, and just made contact with him about it and just asked if we would be allowed in here. And so then they just kind of talked about it, set it up, and we're lucky enough to come in here. We have to volunteer our time and to clean up after, the varsity duels and stuff like that. But that's a small price to pay to come in here twice a week and practice in, like you said, the best facility in the nation. And we're very grateful for that opportunity. And I feel like it's definitely made a big part of wrestling is cutting weight. I feel like you can look at me now, I'm pretty sweaty, and I feel like I've only wrestled half the practice here just because, alumni now, you don't have to go in with every rep. But it's pretty hot in here, and over there in the RPAC, they like to keep it cool for all the students in there. So just, this facility is made for wrestling, and it's a lot nicer than, what we were used to. And even like my freshman year, we were in the RPAC all 4 years, and, just smaller mat, you're only relegated to one mat with like 20 or 30 guys, and it's a small space to try to have a good practice in that room. So we're very grateful to have this room available to us.
All right, let's talk about academics. You graduated, as we mentioned. You got your degree. You're in ag sales?
Yes.
So what's the degree actually? To help me out there.
So my degree is called Sustainable Plant Systems, and then I specialize in agronomy. Just long story short, so the College of Ag had several majors that were around the plant science sphere, and so they combined all those into one. And so mine used to be what was called the agronomy major, which is basically just like row crop science. How do we raise a good crop to feed our animals and feed us? And so that's kind of what I specialized in, is how to raise like corn, soybeans, vegetables, just anything that would be turned into food for, farm to table, that kind of stuff. And so that was my specialty. And going off of that, I transitioned into the ag sales. I always call that agronomy major kind of the jack of all trades of that industry. So we get stuff in the machinery side, we get stuff in the plant side, research, we kind of do it all, and even the business side as well with that major. And so that's just kind of, ag sales was one path that I could have taken out of college, and I ended up having a family friend that started a new company here, and he invited me on, and we've just been taking it one day at a time, getting better as we go. So similar to what we do in here. So
yeah. I mean, let me ask you an obvious question. Your wrestling background, did it help you in the academic world while you were here at Ohio State? And the next step is, is it helping you right now in your professional career?
Yeah. So I think as wrestlers, we always run into days where, whether you'd be sucking weight or you've got a bruise or you're hurt or you're aching or something. And I feel like the mindset, and it's a good mindset to have in the industry and just in our economy, is you just kind of got to put your head to the grindstone sometime, your nose to the grindstone, and just go. And even when it sucks a little bit, you still have to go and do your best that day. And I think that mindset has really just transitioned into my academics and life in general. And I always try to give that mindset to others whenever I get the chance, especially here in wrestling. Because, what I get out of wrestling, I hope other people can get out of wrestling too. And that's just making yourself a better man every day and trying to be the best that you can be every day. And so I feel like that attitude in wrestling transitions to everything you do in life, and it just becomes contagious to those around you as well. So yeah, I'd say wrestling has definitely had a big impact on my life and my career, especially in academics.
All right, last question and I'll let you go. Got to know, that feeling of getting your hand raised as a national champ, was it different than getting your hand raised at other times? I guess what I'm getting at is you accomplished a high goal, right? Mm-hmm. But you've had your hand raised a lot. Take me through that moment when you won that national championship.
So that moment, I don't want to say it wasn't necessarily expected. You know, whenever you're a wrestler and just any athlete, you always strive to have the confidence and strive to have the ability and almost the swagger to achieve high goals, and that's what you're setting out to do. So I don't want to say I walked into the tournament expecting just to finish like 6th, 5th, 3rd, or 4th, whatever. I've been there before, like you said, 4-time All-American. So like I've been there before, but to the way it happened, I've never hit a broomstick in my life. But,
nice.
He just gets your leg shelved and reaches on your back, and then you just grab his leg and fall into it. Just, that comes from just wrestling here with your best, that's not a move I've ever hit, even in live in the room, but I did it one time, and one time's all it took. And so you stuck him, and getting up, there's a video on Flow Wrestling that I think when it happened, like it was like the next day, and you get featured on there, and you watch the video, and I'm like jumping, and I don't have a very high vert, but I think I was probably like 18 inches off the ground.
Extra high. Nice.
And so like there's videos you're flexing and yelling and flexing muscles you don't even know you have because you're just so excited, and you gather yourself, walk back to the middle and shake hands, and getting your hand raised, and you're the home crowd, I guess, or you're not at home, but the crowd, your fans are all cheering for you. It's just unreal. It is really, you just all smiles, and you like walking off the mat. I remember I didn't even know what to think. I was just like, that just happened. Holy cow. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was just a little bit from how the match ended. You never expect a match to, especially when you hit a Jonesy or a broomstick, you never expect to pin somebody in that. And so it just kind of was, I don't want to say a shock, but it was just like a good surprise. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, your joy is definitely grateful. It's definitely a feeling that you feel walking off the stage, but on the stage is just pure excitement and emotion. And once you get your hand raised, you just can't help but smile. And it's a feeling that I'm not used to feeling. Obviously, like it's just one of those once in a lifetime moments. But definitely hope it's something that I get to experience again, because that was a high, definitely a high in the moment that you'll never forget.
And the point is, you can get that at a club program, whether it's at Ohio State or whether it's at the local college. If there's a club program available, I assume you're going to tell somebody, go join the club.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like I said, I got my brother in the club now. He's a freshman, and we almost called guys, got other kids that are in our high school program that are looking to go to Ohio State, and it's almost the Miami Trace Ohio State Wrestling Club pipeline.
All right.
Kids that aren't necessarily to look for. Maybe one kid in particular is thinking about going into pharmaceutical, trying to be a pharmacist. That's a tough major, going pre-medical, and so he'd rather come do this club route and focus on his academics rather than try to have the grind, cut and wait for the varsity team, and you're like 4th or 5th man in the lineup at any given weight class. And so it's a lot to give, and being on a varsity team is amazing. I don't want to take anything away from that, but for some people that's just not the route. And the club team is definitely a great alternative, and you can definitely achieve great things in here if you are willing to put the time in, just like anybody else. So.
And the program, I know it's not a funded program per se, but you travel. You went to Puerto Rico, you've been, Texas, all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So you still get to see other places. This is not chump league here.
Yeah. So, like you said, went to Texas my freshman year, Allen, Texas. Big arenas. You're competing in the national tournament, big arenas, and we go to Puerto Rico, and That was awesome. I mean, going to Puerto Rico to wrestle, you never think you'd do it in a million years, And then, we've been in Louisiana the last 2 years. They'll be in Louisiana again this year.
Okay.
And then I think they're going back to Texas the following year. So lots of places to travel. Iowa State's in our conference, so there's sometimes in the past they've gone to Ames. I've been to Michigan, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania for tournaments. You travel, you get tons of experience wrestling high level competition, and you're as good as you want to be. It's not something that you have to devote your entire life to, which is the appeal in it. So you definitely get a great experience traveling with the club, and then also great experience wrestling good competition.
I love that you said you're as good as you want to be, because wrestling is one of those things. If you don't give, you're not going to receive. But in this environment, you can have other goals, but still scratch that itch, like you said.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Congratulations on the natty.
Thank you.
Yep. And giving back to the program, coming back here.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.